initially just really as an illustration of the different hats I wear at different times, often at the same time as well. But I think it's kind of useful because I feel like, although this is down as an artist talk, I'm really talking about, I will talk a little bit about my work initially, but really I'm talking about a project which is informed by me being an artist, but it's much more, but it's an archive and a collection and with public intentions. So that's kind of why that's there, really. So I'm going to talk to you about the Red Shoes Radical Poster Archive, which kind of has grown out of me collecting posters, and I always, once I realised how it was evolving, I realised that I didn't want to have a collection of posters, but like a personal collection of posters. I wanted to share them. I've always been a record collector, vinyl as it's called these days. But when you collect records and vinyl, the biggest joy for me has always been about playing records to other people and sharing songs and stuff to people when they come around or whatever. And I feel like that about the posters, really. They give me a great deal of pleasure. I find them, my initial way into it was aesthetic interest and visual interest, but I want to share them, and that's really what the archive is all about. But just to by way of an introduction to me as an artist, this is a photograph from something I did when I was a curator at Newport Museum and Art Gallery around about 10 years ago. And we wanted to do something that was off-site and a bit more unconventional and was outside the constraints of the museum and art gallery kind of straitjacket, really. And there was a lot of empty shops which were being used by artists in different ways. And we had a couple of weeks in one of the shops on John Frost Square, which isn't even there anymore now, John Frost Square. And this was a really big wall upstairs in an old shop, like a showroom. And me and the technician Tristram had an interesting couple of days, just sort of fly posting all over the wall, really. And I think what I was interested in back then, I think it was linked to some talks. So to be honest, I can't quite remember why we did it, but what I remember being interested in was how posters communicate and what an amazing tool a poster is. And I still feel the same way. I still think there's a massive role for posters in the 21st century. And I think I'm going to demonstrate that in this talk as well. I think there's some, I'm going to show you posters that are literally being used today. My kind of art practice for the last decade or so has been very political, putting a lot of my ideas and principles and values and things I'm passionate about into practice. Published a number of newspapers. The one on the right there, the Great Frock and Robe Swindle, that was an intervention, a sort of an act of protest against the Queen's Diamond Jubilee in 2012. I guess the way things are going, I'm probably going to have to do another one in a couple of years. So Don, it's good to have you on the call. Your services might be required.
I wondered why I was here this evening.
No, just pure coincidence. But just quickly about that newspaper. We printed 7,000 copies, and they went all over the UK. They also went to London on the weekend of the Diamond Jubilee, and they were free. Massive collaborative project, totally changed my practice forever. Worked with over 50 artists internationally across the UK. Did it on a budget of nothing. Massive amounts of goodwill. Had people designing it, wouldn't give us their name and address, didn't know who they were, but they were willing to design it. We had people giving us hundreds of pounds anonymously. So it was a really interesting thing to be a part of. And I feel like with all my work, I always talk about it as though it's a project and it's a we thing, because that's really how I operate. I think I'm not really that comfortable doing stuff and claiming it for myself. I'm interested in shared ownership and shared agency and that kind of thing. Jumping forward to about 2014, I got a small grant from the Arts Council of Wales to put a body of work together called Red Shoes. And out of that grew a project which still is going on today, a social sculpture project called Resistance Assistance, which is those umbrellas you can see. It's about 70 or 80 umbrellas, and they are available for people to use free of charge. It's a not-for-profit kind of situation. And but like if a trade union borrows it or someone who's got a bit of funding, I ask them to throw a bit of money back as a donation to help keep the project going. And I'm just going to share some pictures really of it being used. Red Shoes, by the way, I should mention how that came about, the march with the umbrellas there. An artist, a Merthyr-born artist called Becca Thomas. I think someone's got their mic left on. If they could mute themselves, that would be great. Becca Thomas, who's a Merthyr-born artist, initiated the idea, had the idea to walk from Merthyr to Cardiff over a weekend, and it was actually coincided with May Day, International Workers' Day. I kind of didn't hear the word walk. What I heard was march. And because I was right in the thick of a lot of very sort of anti-austerity activism at the time, we basically called that first Red Roots walk, we called it the People's March for Dignity and Culture. And of course, we had flags. And being Merthyr, you may or may not know that Merthyr is literally the birthplace of the red flag protest, and so we wanted to make sure that the flags were a big part of the of that as well. And here's us on Sunday finishing the walk off, and it's still going on. It's now an annual event, and it's very much Becca's thing. It was a privilege just to be part of it, and in the first year, it's a wonderful thing. It happens every year. I almost never get to go to it because I'm always doing something on the Saturday for May Day, because I'm a trade unionist. So I've yet to actually do another Red Route, but one day I will. And there's the umbrellas again, just skipping through these. That's an anti-fascist demo in Cardiff. This was the All Grieve picnic, celebrating 30 years of All Grieve, and the fact that they're still campaigning for justice for the miners who were charged with riot. This is a trade union branch who used the umbrellas for a particular campaign they had. That is Jeremy Corbyn in the blurry photograph there, behind the B, and that's me in front of him. This was actually when Jeremy was originally running for leadership, when no one really knew who Jeremy Corbyn was, including me. And then the photo underneath that is just a couple of months later, when the campaign was really taking off, and we realised that it almost certainly would become leader, and that was at Durham Political School with my trade union Unite. No NATO, there's a NATO summit, as you know, in Newport. So I gave them some umbrellas. I didn't lend them to them because it was all a load of anarchist friends of mine. I knew I'd probably never get them back. So I just gave them the umbrellas for that one. And it was great. They had some really good press. So these are both press photographs that I pinched. This is a Pride event. Couldn't tell you what year, but that was actually the Plaid Cymru stand. most years, the umbrellas get borrowed for White Ribbon Day, which is obviously a day to highlight violence against women. And just wanted to share with you how it works. And I do workshops with the umbrellas as well, worked in schools, youth groups, youth workers, teachers. So yeah, that's, that's something that's ongoing. And if you're interested in that, do give me a shout. I've also designed a lot more posters than I realised. I've kind of done it sort of, over the years. This is one in a very old-fashioned, traditional way of sort of a modern version of an old poster. It was for a rally in October 2014. This is one I did earlier this year around free school meals. I guess these are more like posters that just go a lot online and become memes, don't they, really? So, but to me, they're still posters. This was for a project called Dear Nigel. So it was a 2015 general election intervention, and that kind of led on to a piece of street art. Really, I didn't know how it was going to pan out. As I said earlier, I like to share my ideas and invite people to participate in the work, really, and that's what the umbrellas are all about. And Dear Nigel was people responded to the hashtag via Twitter, and then I kind of collected all those, and I didn't really know what I was going to do with them, and then I got invited to display them on an empty shop in Albany Road in Cardiff, where I live. These are some from last year, from the general election. The one on the left is based on a lovely old poster I found from the New Zealand Labour Party. But it is just beautiful colours. I can't really take any credit for it. I just pinched the whole sort of look of it, but I really like that poster. And here they are. So they were all printed off. There's about 20 odd different designs, and some very naughty people went round Cardiff, fly posting them here, there, and everywhere. And I guess they kind of worked, really, because Cardiff stayed red, and so we didn't quite win the election, but yeah, they played their part a little bit in the votes in Cardiff, I think. So that's kind of just a bit of a snapshot of me in the art, and now I'm going to move on to talking about posters, really, and how the poster collection started and how it evolved into what I'm now calling an archive, what is really a publicly accessible archive. That's the aspiration, anyway. I just become increasingly drawn towards graphic design recently, in the last sort of 5-10 years, I suppose. And I think it's because I've been doing a bit of design as part of my work, the newspaper. So I didn't design that great Frock and Robe Swindle newspaper, the anti-monarchy one, but I did design subsequent newspapers. And I just got into design, and I'm fine art sculpture trained, but it just made me sort of start to look at posters in particular, and really appreciate how rich and interesting graphic design is. And I started to buy books of posters. I started to buy kind of reproduction posters of particularly Soviet posters. I obviously really classic, hugely influential early 20th century, really broke the mold in terms of what's possible with graphic design and post-revolutionary Soviet Russian stuff in particular. And so that was all I was doing. And then I kind of stumbled across a poster on eBay that was actually an original printed in the Soviet Union. It was a reproduction, but it was an original reproduction. And that's the poster on the right there. Really beautiful. I can't remember the artist. It possibly Mayakovsky, but I could be wrong about that. But and I'm thinking it's 20s, 30s. So that poster dates from the 70s in terms of its reproduction, and it would have been, reproduced in an edition of like 50,000 or something like that. But I paid £15 for it, and I got it from Ukraine or somewhere like that. And that, I think that for me must have been the point at which I suddenly realized that I could actually have the real thing to physically touch and get up close and personal to. And I do feel that that's what's driving this whole project is it's one thing to see things digitally, but it's another thing entirely to see the real thing and imagine the story behind it. And then the poster on the left is I got about 8 different designs, again reproductions of really early 1920s classic Soviet theatre production posters, and that one's a particular, both of these are really quite well known posters. Again, another Soviet one there. So everything I'm going to show you now, pretty much, there's about 70 of them, are posters now from the archive. So you're getting a bit of a glimpse into the archive, which I'm really pleased about. And I'm going to show nearly all the works in the exhibition, the Ways of Protest exhibition in Swansea, which is obviously why I've been invited to talk to you tonight. The poster on the right is a Cuban poster, and it's actually a screen print. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the Cuban poster tradition. Again, another really big sort of influence on radical poster design. So I've been on a real journey of learning. I knew nothing about any of this. I kind of picked stuff up. I wouldn't say I'm an expert or a specialist even, but I picked up quite a lot of knowledge over the last couple of years. And that Cuban posters, one of the interesting things about Cuban posters is how they make their ink. But actually, I'm going to talk to you about that later. So on to the exhibition then. These 2 works are in the exhibition. The one on the left is a declaration of a meeting of international students. I might be able to tell you the actual date of that one, and it's 1983. And obviously, what's going on there is they've had a meeting. They've made a declaration of for peace, life, and against nuclear war, along the same lines as the UN do. And then they publish the full text on the poster, and then they print the poster and then get it out there. Get it's a way of letting the world know that they've made this declaration. This is what they want, and so there's often there's a strong reason for the poster's existence, and I quite like they're real sort of functional objects posters, as well as being often very beautiful works of art in their own right. The one on the right is really self-explanatory. I think it's from the Ukraine. One of the interesting things about the archive is the fact that I don't know very much often about the posters that I collect and acquire, because they don't come with much information, and it's not and because I've now got over 200 posters, in a way, when this becomes much more easy to access for people, it will be up to other people to come in and look at the posters and do some research and find out a bit more about the poster. So I quite like the fact that they're a bit mysterious. Here's another couple. The one on the left is in the show. My mind's gone blank now, but a really famous poster designer did the one on the left, and it'll probably come to me in a bit. And interestingly, it's a Labour Party poster from 1980. So obviously at the time there must have been a no nuclear weapons policy with the Labour Party. The one on the right is obvious. I guess it's probably post 9/11 and something to do with the war on terror. Again, don't know the year of that. I probably could find it in terms of when I acquired it on eBay. So we're kind of thematically looking at the posters now as we're going through the slides. Again, on the subject of peace and anti-nuclear, I like the one on the left there. It's kind of saying that if we stop the arms trade, we can then address hunger, poverty, disease, and illiteracy. And who wouldn't want that, really? So these are just examples of the things I've collected. I don't know. I've got no control over what I collect because I stumble across them, and I'm funding it all myself. So I'm limited by what I can afford, really, or what people sometimes donate as well. But I'm going to get on to how we can make the archive more sustainable. Another couple of pieces from the show, obviously very relevant to what's going on at the moment with Black Lives Matter this year. These are both late 60s. The one on the left is an original reproduction. And the reason I say original reproduction is because there are a lot of these posters out there that you can buy from people who don't give a toss about what the poster's saying. It's just someone with a printer and a DVD of images, high-res images, and they're just printing them off and flogging them for money, you know. But so I ethically collect, and there's a sort of a philosophy behind that. So you're not kind of adding to the commodification of these posters, because the original posters are often worth thousands, and certainly hundreds. So it's really quite tough trying to build the collection in that, but it is doable. But that was printed. The one on the left is printed by the Design Museum in London, probably in the last 10 years. I don't think it has a date on it. The one on the right, though, is actually of the time. It was from a book printed in 1970 of Cuban posters. So this is where I was going to talk to you a bit more about Cuban posters, and it will have been a screen print originally. So this poster is I didn't take it out of the book, but it's taken from a giant poster book, which I've quite recently acquired it. So it's really big, you know, and that poster is in this book. That book itself is quite hard to purchase, because it's what people are doing is they're buying the book and then they're ripping the posters out and then selling the posters online. And the whole point of all these posters is for them to be mass produced and seen, and so there's a really interesting thing going on there about access to these and who can actually, so like I was saying earlier about getting up close and personal to these objects that have a real history. They have something to tell us about where they came from, but also great power in terms of inspiring, I think, what's going on and reminding us that the battles and struggles that today have been going on for decades, and so I'm really interested in that, in terms of what the archive might contribute in terms of political education. And anyway, to go on to that ink stuff with the Cuban posters, I read somewhere that they didn't use the sort of oil-based sticky inks. They often use stuff that was more closer to like powder paint or like acrylic paint, but thick, chalky sort of acrylic paint. And I do happen to have a few Cuban posters. I've got about 6 and they're all screen prints, and in every case they're really bumpy, and the ink is cracking and crackling, because they're all sort of like 40, 50 years old kind of thing. But really brilliant, beautiful posters, really bright and colourful. And I'm not going to show you any more Cuban ones, I don't think, but well worth checking out, because they've had a huge influence and have been copied numerous times and inspired other posters. So that last poster, the Now poster, the Black Civil Rights poster, that was an OSPAL poster, and OSPAL stands for, I haven't got it actually, sorry. The Organisation of Solidarity with People of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and that's another really big tradition of the left, which is international solidarity, and the idea that we gain strength from supporting one another's campaigns and struggles, and that whole internationalism that we find on the left. And so the next group of posters are all along those lines, and I'm also got a lovely couple of posters to share with you that have literally just been promised to me in the last few days. So the ones here, we got the Namibia one, which is about the stripping of natural resources by corporate interests and foreign powers. Again, at the bottom there, that's a declaration by the UN, a decree number 1 adopted by the United Nations in 1974. So again, they produced a poster to highlight that, spread the word, let people know that that had taken place. The one on the right is from Christiana, Freetown, which is in 1971, a group of radicals and hippies and leftists took over an old military area of Copenhagen and declared it a free state. And I'm pretty sure it still has that some sort of semi-autonomous status to this day. But that's a lovely poster I picked up in a junk shop in Copenhagen when I was over there for a wedding, or at least 10 years ago now. And sorry, a couple more international ones. I can't work out what the Palestine was, but one where it was printed or anything, but that was like 70s, that one. And obviously still one of the, major struggles and campaigns supported by many people around the world. Another Namibia poster. This is a GLC poster for the Festival of Culture and Resistance. And I quite like the idea of setting up a Festival of Culture and Resistance. Sounds right up my street. The GLC were great, I think. 1984. And then we're on to another very influential part of poster making history, really, and very relevant to some of the works we've got in the exhibition from the archive. So these are from Atelier Popular, and excuse my French, I'm no expert on that language at all, but essentially what happened was there was a massive uprising in 1968, May 68. The whole city, and I think maybe the country as well, went on general strike, and everyone was in solidarity with everybody else. And so the art students from the Beaux Arts Institute set up a huge printmaking operation in the art college, and with paper donated by the striking print press workers from the newspapers, and they produced all these posters, and very much along kind of situationist philosophical lines, really, which was these were not objects to be rarefied and owned and put up on your bedroom wall. These was to be seen on the street. That poster on the right there is beauty is in the street, and it it was really, really like art for the people, really democratic, and they just produced thousands and thousands of these. And they pasted them up everywhere, and they just churned them out. And they're really kind of rough and ready, but they've been incredibly influential, and they've been adapted many, many times. And in fact, one of my posters from last year for the election last year was actually the May 68 was a slight variation on that, and that's a detournement. So that's where you take it and you kind of repurpose it and recycle it, and it's in the spirit of the work itself. And so that leads me on to something else to share with you. So this is actually again one of those original reproductions. So this is a print by the Working Class History blog website organization. You can find them on Facebook, and they have their own website and do a blog and a podcast and everything else. And so they printed these to raise money for their project. And the reason I'm showing you that is because there's a group called the Autonomous Design Group, and they're kind of anonymous in a way, and they're based in the UK. And what they do is they produce posters free of charge, and they're everything on their website is anti-copyright, so anybody can reproduce the posters, print them off, and they want as many of them as possible to be out there, because they don't want that commodification to take place, where the posters become desirable and then become just an investment opportunity for someone looking to make money. So and those Paris 68 posters by Atelier Popular, the originals change hands for thousands and thousands of pounds. It's just ridiculous. They're all printed on newsprint, and they were never meant to end up like that. But that's the kind of that's the world we live in, isn't it? So these are their response, and this was a pandemic response. So obviously, that whole no return to normality. So if we look at the original poster, said return to normal, and then they've reproduced it there, but then they've talked about normal was locking humanity into extinction due to inaction on climate collapse. So they're kind of flipping that around and using it to say something about what's going on in British society at the moment. And here's a shot of their website, actually. The Autonomous Design Group. I'm going to share some links at the end. There's a slide at the end with all the links, and I can paste them into the chat box at the end as well. But basically, if you go onto any of these posters and you just hover over it and click on it, behind that is a high resolution image of the poster, as well as often the files of the design software they use to design it. So it's a big collective of designers and artists. So they're all different sort of designs, different styles and that kind of thing. But they're great. I only discovered them in the last couple of months. And I'm hoping to print a copy of each of their posters off as actual physical objects. And I've been in touch with them, and whilst their philosophy is about getting as many produced as possible so they can't become commodities, they also like the idea that a physical archive exists as well. So we sort of preserve it in a different way as well as digitally, because I've kind of got a bit of a digital archive going on, if I'm honest. It's almost impossible not to have that, but primarily this is about the physical objects and allowing people to come and touch them and study them and be inspired by them and see them up close. The poster right in the middle of this slide, it says, "Landlords need us, we don't need landlords." I was sent 20 copies of that by ADG, and they asked me to give them away at the Ways of Protest exhibition in Swansea. So there, I guess there may still be some left at Elysium there. So if you do live nearby and it does ever open again after lockdown, you might be able to go and pick yourself one up. Their only condition was that they had to be free and couldn't be sold. And I did keep a couple back for the archive. So I left about 16 with Elysium 17 or something like that. But yeah, great people. And I've just remembered, I was going to just talk to you about another slide. So I'm just going to go back a couple of slides. So this slide here, as I said earlier, someone's very kindly offered to donate some posters to me just over the weekend, and really generous. A guy called Chris Terrell from Clacton-on-Sea. I don't know if he's joining us tonight, but so generous. He was selling some posters on eBay, and I got in touch and made an offer for a couple of the posters, but said, look, I can't, my offer's lower than you're asking, and it would need to include postage. And I explained that I was collecting for an archive, and it was also sort of based on their condition as well. Anyway, he got back to me and said, if you can send me the link to the archive, because I said I could send him the link, and I did. And he looked at the link, and then he sent me a lovely message saying, if these don't sell, I want to donate them to your archive, and I'll pay for the postage as well. And not only that, but I'm going to give you a load of other posters as well. So just a lovely gesture. And that's really what needs to happen with the archive to make it sustainable and to outgrow one person's passion and kind of wallet. It needs to stop. It's not sustainable if I'm buying or someone else is buying the posters. It needs to be moved towards a sort of donation model where people trust the archive is doing the right thing, see the value in adding to the archive, and then do the sort of things that this guy Chris has done. So it's just really wonderful thing that happened. I'm really chuffed about it. Again, back to that whole idea of the poster as a tool of protest and raising awareness and getting your message out there. Two posters very similar to this are in the exhibition in Swansea. These were both given to me by there's a group of people from all over South Wales, but in the Cardiff area where I'm based, there's a guy called Lex in Caerphilly who very kindly let me have some of these posters, and these were pasted up all over Cardiff and South Wales, and in fact posters just very similar to this were posted up all over the UK in their last big Extinction Rebellion campaign. And what's interesting about these posters, and again I'm going to post a link at the end of this so you can actually watch the video yourself, is there's a group of poster makers, printmakers, screen printers in Brighton, and they did a really instructional video on how to mass produce posters like this on newsprint, chip chop paper, using really basic materials, so that it's really accessible. You didn't need a screen printing setup. You actually just used like a little mini roller, some emulsion paint, and a stencil, and you can still churn out loads and loads of posters. And it's great to have a couple of these in the archive as well. Again, you can see by all the creases in them that they're not designed to be kept, but it's still important that we capture some of this. I think I like to think that it's one of the valuable things about setting an archive like this up. And good to have some contemporary stuff, because I'm really aware that a lot of what's in it is quite old, and on a very similar vein, there's a couple of people, John and Jill in Ceredigion, who go by the name of Red Monkey, and they are printmakers. Well, they're not really. I don't know if they are printmakers. Actually, they're sort of semi-retired activists with a life of activism behind them, particularly around the peace movement and anti-nuclear movement, I think. And but they regularly produce screen printed posters in a very traditional, again, a very low tech way, using kind of wheat paste to mix in to make their own inks and that kind of stuff. And what they produce their screen prints for is to turn them into placards. So these are not, I think a placard is a poster is a placard, actually, if it's mass produced. But they make these in sort of, maybe they'll make 30 of them, and then they'll staple 2 together with a stick up the middle. And then they take them to various demonstrations, events and protests for that particular issue, whatever that issue might be. And that's what their purpose is. That's their function. They're John describes them as tools, and not as works of art, actually, even though I think they're completely beautiful. And they've loaned these to me. So there's 3 of these works in the exhibition in Swansea. But I'm hoping to acquire some of their prints for the archive. But we'll I haven't yet met them to have that conversation. But they're lovely people and do brilliant work. And I was just so pleased to be able to include them in the exhibition, not least because they're quite recent pieces of work. The one at the top there is actually about universal credit. Obviously, there's the Free Palestine one, and then on the previous page, can't remember what the translation of the Trump one was now, but it was something to do with putting him back in a tin, I think. But anyway, moving on. The poster here on the right is in the exhibition in Swansea as well, and obviously, really being aware. I came to see the exhibition, and so there's a fantastic video. I highly recommend it. It's available online, of lots of activists, mostly women, which was really brilliant as well. So often the change makers are women, and it was Shaun James from the Miners Support Group talking about how that all came about and how it sort of affected her, and she eventually became an MP. And so it was wonderful to be able to include some miners stuff in the Swansea show. And I've got quite a few miners posters, miners strike posters, and it's really interesting because I was talking about the commodification earlier. They're very some of the miner strike stuff changes hands for stupid money, So again, I just think it's people profiteering. I don't think it's people who really want it because they care about it. That it's people buying it because they think it's an investment or they can make a profit out of it. But I'm very lucky to have a few original objects. These were from Alan Hardman. He actually gave these to me. He was the cartoonist with with Militant, who are now the Socialist Party. And then again, on the same lines, industrial disputes. Another huge industrial dispute in the history of the UK is the Wapping dispute. And here's a couple of original posters from that by the local trade union, the print trade unions and the National Union journalists. Went on for not quite a year, I don't think, but very, really important part of the labour movement history and trade union history. And there's Mr. Murdoch there on the right. The next posters, the one on the left is in the show also. What I love about that, and I guess I wouldn't really maybe normally seek one-off things out, but when I got it, I wasn't sure whether it was a one-off or not. But that's completely handmade. And so It's a Cowley car plant dispute from the 70s. Again, quite a sort of seminal set of disputes in the 70s. And it's about a shop steward who's been victimised, and this is all hand rendered. Someone sat down with a stencil set and drawn all this out, made sure it all fits the page correctly, and then coloured it in with felt tip pens. And it's just it's a beautiful thing. I'd love to know the history of who that person was who actually made that poster. And I guess I wonder if there was another one, and there was several that he or she made and stuck around their workplace. Probably never know, but it's a really that's the sort of thing that you could only experience if you got to see it really close up. Some really recent one, I picked it up from Unite office, the Honda car plant in Swindle. A May Day rally in Glasgow last year. I don't really know much about that. Again, like I said, don't always know what's behind all these posters. I think even things that are like, I still think that picket line thing is a poster. So I'm quite sort of broad in what I think of as a poster, really. Again, moving on to a couple of pieces in the exhibition, I'm really just really quite proud of these two, to have these in the collection. Hugely important things from our past. The anti-apartheid movement and Greenham Common, and both of these are originals. And it's just so lovely, I think, for people to see them. And the one on the left there was printed by the ANC. I guess probably maybe printed in Britain, but it's just a joy to have them and then share them with other people, really. And I can't, as I said earlier, I can't really. I don't go after any one particular poster. I just see what's out there, and if it fits the broad kind of definition of radical poster, then and it's affordable, I'll go for it and add it to the archive. But I have got a considerable amount of posters around feminism and women in the workplace and women's rights, and these are another couple. I think the one on the right is in the exhibition. Interestingly, it's actually a sort of flyer that folds out into a poster for a Jamie Reed exhibition. And Jamie Reed, as you know, is an anarchist designer who designed Nevermind the Bollocks album cover for the Sex Pistols and all their other stuff, and the God Save the Queen cover. So really, really sort of iconic artist or designer. Although I would say, I think he's I don't know. He produces a lot of stuff which seems to sell for lots of money, but I don't know where he's coming from. He's probably an amazing guy. But I probably should stop now on that one. Again, the picture on the right is bang up to date. There's someone on eBay who's obviously going around London getting these out of the metal containers where all the free papers are, and they're just you can with what a year we've had of headlines. So there's loads of these on eBay of different things, and I just thought this one was I quite like the idea of having that. And it actually refers to not the Marcus Rashford thing that's just happened, but something that happened earlier this year around free school meals, I think at the beginning of the first lockdown. Good to have that, I think. I'm coming to the end of the slideshow now. I'm going to play you a little video at the end. I think we've got time. It's just to sort of play you a video of someone speaking from a poster archive in the States. We're talking about what posters, what they do, what their job is. But just to finish off with the last couple, I put the class war one in because class wars featured, I feel, in a way, it's featured in the show in Swansea, although it's more about the publication before class war, which Ian Bone was involved with before he moved away and started printing class war. I don't know if class war was printed in Swansea, but that's kind of why that's there. And obviously our wonderful health service. So I do collect the odd political party poster as well. I don't think it quite fits the definition of a radical poster, but I think some of the older posters were radically political at the time. Another thing I've had donated recently, in fact, the night before last, was a whole set of Extinction Rebellion posters. I think they've really, they're proving that the poster is far from dead in terms of its value and usefulness, and there's just a selection really of the XR ones. So if you'd like to know more about the archive, just I've set up a Facebook page, Red Shoes Radical Poster Archive, and I'm also on Instagram, but I'm a bit crap on it, if I'm honest. I go on it about once a week. I'm not really kind of making it work yet, but you can find it on Instagram as well. I don't know how you go about doing that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing and play you the video. This last image, I think every talk I've done to anyone about anything to do with my work, I always finish with this slide. It tickles me, and it's also what I like about it is that it was a meme, and the original story behind it was that it was an FBI poster from the 1950s that they had in all the FBI offices around the States, and this was to warn their operatives that we need to be really beware of artists. And it turned out to be a load of crap, and it never was an FBI poster at all. But I love the idea of this is what artists do, because I think they do, and I think the ways of protest exhibition exemplifies that really. So here's the links. I'm gonna pop these in the. You can either screenshot it now or but I'm going to pop them in the chat box anyway. But I'll stop sharing and just share this video with you, which will take me a minute to set up. It's only like a 1 minute clip, and then you can ask me questions if you've got any.
That was my epiphany moment. That was the moment. Literally, the light bulb went off. That's how posters work. You're going about your daily life. You're not making a special trip to a museum to see, a Picasso. You're going about your daily life, and there's this thing that attracts your attention by its bold color, its slogan, its graphic. And it makes you stop, it makes you think, it makes you ask a question. And every time we ask a question, we're different. Questions change us, because it kind of breaks through the bubble that we always have, that we know what we need to know to get through the day. But posters are able to break through that and make us see the world a little differently than we saw the world before the posters.